Support for WICN comes from listeners like you. Thank you. Every day here at 90.5, we continue the tradition of giving you the world's best jazz. And today, it gets even better, as New England's top jazz artists perform for you live in the WICN Performance Studio. This is Live Jazz New England. Here's your host, jazz pianist Pamela Hines.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Live Jazz New England. I'm your host, Pamela Hines. We want to thank all of you for tuning in today. My guest is free jazz pianist Pat Battstone, with Richard Poole on vibes and Todd Brunel on clarinet. Pat has a new CD out called Beyond the Horizon, which is a solo project, but today he'll be performing in a free jazz in a trio setting. He studied with Madame Shaloff and Joanne Brackeen, Charlie Bonacos, and he's got a lot of stories to share about Paul Bley and being in New York. But for right now, we want to get to the music. Other topics of discussion are how do you go from being a Berkeley graduate to being a rocket scientist? We've got lots to talk about.
Okay. Hi, this is Pat Battstone, and this is my first radio announcement, so forgive me if I'm a little untuned with it. Anyway, what we do, Richard and I have been playing for the past 6 years, and we developed a free thing, but it was more of a chamber sound that we pretty much just stumbled across. The more we played, the more we listened, the more we eliminated, this voice came out. So we really call it chamber improvisations, because it really does have a quiet, more introspective sound than what people associate with free jazz, which I would say that's like Archie Shepp and some of the New York, even Ornette. So we're not in that genre at all, and what you're going to hear is something very quiet and introspective. We normally work with a quartet. Unfortunately, the bass player makes his living by teaching on Wednesday. So this is we call ourselves the Last Taxi, and this is the Uber version of the Last Taxi. So Richard Poole's on vibes. Normally he's on vibes and drums. Todd Brunel's on bass clarinet, and I'll be on acoustic piano only. Often I play a Rhodes with some distortion devices. That's for the full-blown Last Taxi. That's the Chrysler version. Okay, we're going to start off. The way we usually start off something is we musically say hello to each other. We haven't played in a couple of weeks, so this is a warming up. We start off quiet, take turns playing solos, embellish solos. Certain times the solos will interweave with other solos. This isn't stepping on somebody else's solo. We're actually doing this on purpose. And then later we'll probably go into duos and other trios. We like to vary the sound, and we like to vary the textures. If we just played something fast, we're going to play something slow. If we played something dark, we're going to play something bright, and go through opposites. And so without ado, we're going to start off.
You're listening to Live Jazz New England, and my guest today, I'm your host, Pamela Hines. My guest today is free jazz pianist Pat Battstone with Richard Poole on vibes and Todd Brunel on clarinet.
I've at this from, at this voice, at this concept from going into a recording studio with nothing planned, white sheet of paper, and played what came to us, and then we spent the next month hours and hours a day listening to this. Richard was at my house, I was at Richard's house almost on a daily basis, and we critiqued every little last note that we did. Both Richard and I came from a school of understanding that improvement is based on the thing you do worse that you eliminate. And you may have heard that same concept from the same teacher, Pam. But what we did is there was chunks of music, probably 50% of the music, we said, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. There were other things that we heard that were, certainly valid music, but it didn't belong in our voice. It sounded foreign, okay? So we said, well, it's nice, but there's something we kept hearing, this little sort of, you can't see my fingers on the radio, but there was a sparkling sound that we kept hearing, and we said, that's the sound we want, and everything else we're eliminating. And then a month later, we'd go back into a recording studio and make a real conscious effort not to go into those territories. It wasn't like we were, cutting our legs off, but there was something we were trying to get to.
Right.
And that's how we developed this voice. That's our concept. We didn't start out saying, well, I want to play free jazz band because it's hip. We were saying, what's next? What can we do that we haven't done? And we both arrived at the same conclusion that was the voice.
Right.
And later, we took that ethos, that center, and Todd came along, there was Kit Demos came along, Chris Rathbun came along, and they all identified right with it. We gave them like a core which they could bond to.
Right.
And that's really what the concept, at least the concept that we lived and developed this music by.
So you studied with quite a few musicians here. Now, I guess the first question to me is, how did you go from Berkeley to being a rocket scientist over at Draper? I know, there's quite a jazz band at MIT. We know that that those that choose these types of professions also really enjoy jazz. The complex nature of jazz. And so how did that happen, and who did you study with at Berkeley?
Well, Berkeley, Ray Santisi. I mean, he was the man. Actually, who was the other? Dean Earl. Dean Earl was somebody we all knew and loved, but he was just leaving as I was getting there. That was 1973. So Ray was the person you wanted to study with. And I studied with him offline, too. He was very happy to accept money under the table.
And why is that? Now I've heard Ray's name mentioned before as a teacher. Now, is it because that he clearly communicated these musical ideas and you understood it, or he would play examples, write out the examples so that you understood it? Why was he such a great teacher?
I didn't say he was a great teacher, but he was quite a character. He was a musical icon. Charlie was a teacher with a capital T. When I first heard Marilyn Crispell talking, she says, I heard there was a teacher in Boston. Well, we all knew that was Charlie. He was the real teacher. But Ray was the piano teacher. He was the piano guy at Berkeley at the time. Joanne Brackeen wasn't teaching. Rand Blake, I think, was at New England, but he was teaching. He had just started Third Stream, and that was, way beyond what I was, capable of. So Ray taught you some basics. He certainly could relate to you. But Charlie was the teacher, and when I was first in Boston, I met some musicians, and they said, yeah, go to Berkeley, but they'll give you some fundamentals, they'll get you started with work, capital W work, but get yourself on Charlie Banakis' list.
And how did you come to go from your jazz over to rocket scientist? You'd have to I assume you needed a degree for that, right? You didn't.
I fell in love. Head over heels. Just like, Ulysses up against the mast when they went by the island of the Cyrenes. It was pathetic. At one point, just a number of events took place that suddenly I found myself not studying with Charlie, not studying with, I was with Madame Sholoff and later Serge Konis. I wasn't studying music. I was working at the Hotel Avery, like full-time, trying to get, and then later I was working in Ipswich at a foundry, which that piece was made at that foundry that I gave you. I was making, after 2 years, I was making all of $6 an hour. I thought I was, that's the height of financial success. And I visited my sister, who was living in a Victorian mansion, and she was making 10 as a secretary. And I went, there's some disconnect here. So I went back I started school again, and Northeastern was feasible. They didn't have any, it was affordable, and I think they didn't even have any acceptance. I mean, I had plenty of credentials from earlier, but we went in, and Northeastern had what's called co-op. You work half a year,
right,
and you go to school half a year.
Right.
And the place that I lucked out on was Draper Labs.
Okay. All right. We want to remind our listeners that you are listening to Live Jazz New England on WICN, and it's brought to you by Ed Hyder's Mediterranean Market. Ed Hyder's has been celebrating 40 years in business, and you can get more information at edhyders.com. We also have Richard Poole on vibes today, and Todd Brunel on clarinet. And Richard's got his own stories about Jaco Pastorius, and we've got so much to do, but we also have a limited amount of time, so we want to go ahead and get back to some more music. Do you want to introduce the next tune there, Pat?
Well, I think it's we played something quiet and something sort of agitated. What do we want to do next? We're a democracy here.
Let's play a ballad that goes bad.
Ballad that goes bad. Ooh, that's actually my specialty. We're going to play a creepy
Sounds like
ballad.
love.
I call it a creepy ballad. I'll start.
I like the title.
Nice job, guys.
Nice job. That was Creepy Ballad, Part 1, Part 2, with a few other things thrown in the middle. And that's the way our improvisations sometimes go. It'll come out sounding like French Impressionists at some point, or Russian Romantics, or Schoenberg, because we've all got tons of training and tons of information. So, we've all studied Chick, we've studied Bill Evans.
Okay, so now that you're saying that, I'm going to give you an idea for a song. How about This Train Is Not Stopping at My Station? All right, go.
Okay.
Is that the title?
That's the title.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
She's a tough one.
Let's
here.
go.
Okay.
Okay, so I got that from, what did I get that from? Some kind of a thing about opportunity or something, and I was lamenting some sort of missed opportunity, and I had read this saying that you don't have to lament it. The train just isn't stopping at your station. You're just waiting for another train. So that's what that title's from.
Okay.
So
that's the first time we've ever played that tune.
I was lamenting, missing my appointment because of a missing train.
Yes. Yeah. So there's lots of meaning that you can put into that one, but that was actually the original.
Have you played this before?
Story. Yeah, I think I have. That was really familiar. So you're. We want to tell listeners about your website. This is Pat Battstone on piano, and Richard Poole on vibes, and Todd Brunel on clarinet today. And you're listening to Live Jazz on WICN, Live Jazz New England. So where can our listeners access your CDs?
I'm not sure.
CD Baby, maybe?
Definitely CD Baby. I think on patbattstone.com there are, I believe that at least the past two are on there directly for sale. So I don't have to pay the 50% commission to CD Baby, and I get paid immediately. So definitely the solo CD and the quartet that we did earlier in the year, The Last Taxi, they're both on there.
Okay.
Those are reasonably priced. I think there are links for the duets that Richard and I did earlier in the decade. Gosh, that sounds like so long ago now, doesn't it? Those are, I think, links to CD Baby are on there.
And Richard has been working with Paul Bley. He's been on the scene for a long time. We're talking about just a master. I don't know if you can swing that microphone over there.
Yeah.
And there's so many things I want to talk about, Richard. Not only your playing with Paul Bley, but sometimes we create a myth about celebrity and about, we need to create this drama. But I guess I want to ask you about Jaco and your years of knowing him. The hype versus the man and everything. What was your experience in knowing Jaco?
Well,
Speak into the microphone.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I met him in 1975 or 6 in Fort Lauderdale. I was playing a club and he came in, and I think it was my age, was a little younger. He was lighter. And he had jeans and a T-shirt on and stood in front of me with his arms crossed, checking me out. Said he liked my playing. But then I didn't know who he was until a couple years later when I ran into him. A lot of gigs I played, he'd come by and sit in or be there. So he was on the scene. He started to go on the scene then. He had a lot of energy and had a lot of power, a powerful person. So he did very well, but I wish sometimes he would be in a suit, very, very clean shaven and articulate and taking care of business, and sometimes not. But he was a nice guy. He played all over Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and we all knew him. And I miss him,
So I wanted to ask Richard a couple other questions. Do you mind, Richard Poole? Richard Poole has been on Vibes today, and Pat Battstone on piano with Todd Brunel on clarinet and saxophone. The years with Paul Bley and the places you've gone, can you talk about your own experience with your free jazz career?
Well, I played a few times with Paul, and he's a great friend of mine for many years. But I played in Europe and the United States with him. But primarily, he went out as a solo actor with his friends. I did play in West Berlin. I played in Philadelphia with him, and knew him for years and had a lot of fun with him. You know.
And how does it work with your chemistry and stuff like that? In other words, I would assume that there are free jazz players that it's not quite working with you chemistry-wise or musically-wise. So how do you sort of determine that? How do you
determine the music?
Well, yeah, kind of decide. Well, this is really hitting. We're really connecting here.
Well, it's vibrational velocities. So beyond the music, there's the intervals and the velocity of the chords. So those things are what if people can clairvoyantly click into that, then the sound is better. In other words, if everyone is really playing together, it's like the music is a string, and everyone has a hold of that, so that they're working together. So that's when the music's happening, it's because the people are happening. And if the music really happens years ago in the clubs, the people would show up. There was this vibrational velocity has power. It would draw people in. Somehow they would pick up on that. So music's a great thing. There's so much to do. I wish pianos had quarter tones.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking it's about time we do a little bit of updating on the piano. I think that Kevin Harris talked about that too on the last show. It's the conversational aspect really of jazz that creates the chemistry and the musicality of something, not just everybody just playing, but the actual energy and what you're talking about. There has to be
a group. If there's too much ego, if one person is playing louder or taking too much energy, then the music doesn't go down into the cosmic, right? It just doesn't go out right. The cosmos. You want the music to be very free and clear, and to be saying something spiritually also.